So last summer, I decided to post a video. It was a video of my watch collection. I really didn't have any expectations around posting the video. I just knew that I loved watches and I would love to find more people out there that felt the same way. I loved seeing other people's collections, and I felt it was at a point in which, hey, you know what, I'd love to create a conversation around my collection and just see what people thought. And now, a year later, I can say that video pretty much changed my life. And I'm now looking at my watch box over here, and I'm thinking, wow, a lot has changed. So what I want to do, and what's going on, everybody, Teddy Baldassarre here, is go through an updated state of my watch collection. And of course, I think there's a lot of snobbery that takes place in the watch community. That's really not what I want to be associated with posting my collection online. I just love these things. I love having the conversation with you guys in the comments, and it's been a real treat over the last year to be talking watches with all of you. So I'm excited to show you guys how far I've come, but I'd love to hear what you guys think down below. So guys, without further ado, here is my watch collection as of July 2018. So guys, you know the drill. I go through each watch, kind of one by one, give a little talk about them. At the end, I actually have a really cool heirloom piece that's really special to me, so stick around to the end to kind of get a quick look at that. So guys, the first watch that we have here is the Junghans Max Bill chronoscope. And I feel like this was the star of the show last time around in my old collection video. I think it's just ability to look so minimalist with having so much happening on the dial. It really speaks to this watch and how well it is designed. It's fantastic to look at. I think arguably out of all my watches, this is the one that gets the most compliments. Beautiful domed crystal, and it's just a fantastic looking watch. The only chronograph I have in my collection, of course, there's nothing really spectacular underneath the hood. You have a modified ETA under here, but why you buy this watch isn't because of that. You buy it because of the design. You buy it with the roots from Max Bill in that Bauhaus school of design. Of course, this watch wasn't directly designed by Max Bill himself, but it is a watch that descends from that lineage, and to be able to wear it is a lot of fun. Like I said, gets a ton of compliments, and I'm still really happy I have this in the collection. I have so many people asking, hey, if you ever saw that watch, please let me know. Haven't come to that point yet, so it's really at home in my collection currently. So next up, we have a new acquisition, and it was actually the watch that I was wearing on my wrist, and that is my King Seiko, and this is the 5626 7110. So I have to admit, I was a little bit inspired to get this watch from William, and now when I say a little bit, a lot of it. William from Great Affordable Watches, he did a collab on my channel where we kind of did a group wristwatch check, and one of the watches that he pointed out, or the watch that he brought on the show, was his King Seiko. And I just wanted to get a King Seiko for a couple reasons. One, I thought they were really great looking watches. I wanted to have a piece of Seiko's history, but I wanted a piece of Seiko's history that was almost like forgotten in some way. These watches have a lot of value, but on top of that, in the early 1960s, Seiko decided to release two luxury lines. At this point, this was when the Swiss were really dominant. The perception amongst the public was Swiss watches were the best, Japanese watches were crap. But what Seiko wanted to do is really deconstruct that idea. So they launched Grand Seiko and King Seiko. And the cool thing about it is you have two competing luxury brands, and on top of that, there were two actual factories that were producing King Seiko movements. The ability to have a piece of Seiko's history in my collection was important to me because I do enjoy the brand a lot. I think there's no doubt that they are probably one of the most impactful brands in watchmaking history. So to be able to say I have a watch from Seiko, but another brand inside that, King Seiko, who have ceased production for several years now, but this is kind of just a timeless snapshot of their history, and I'm really excited for it to be in the collection. All right, guys, so next up we have one of my favorite brands, as you guys all know, Nomos, and this is the Nomos Ahoy Neomatic. So when I was considering getting a diver type watch, I was a little conflicted because for me, I have smaller wrists, 6 1/4 inch wrists, and I don't really like the look of a lot of traditional divers. I find them clunky on my small wrists. For a lot of people, I know they love them. So I did want kind of the perks of a diver watch, but not the overall design that come with a lot of divers. And I was looking at Nomos, I'm like, I don't know if I want another Nomos, but I just found this watch and I fell in love with it right away. On top of that, I found it for a great deal. So so I decided to go with it. So this is a Nomos Ahoy Neomatic. There's also the Nomos Ahoy, which is the larger version. This watch here comes in just over 36 millimeters with its case size. It wears a little bit like a 38 to 40 millimeter watch, so it fits really well on my wrist. 200 meters water resistant, fully in-house movement. It's got their DUW 3001 movement inside of here, and it's just a great watch that I really enjoy. Perfect summer watch on my wrist. It does have all the necessary things for me as a guy who's just gonna be casually wearing a watch by the beach, in the pool. This is all I could really ask for, and I just love the look of it. All right, so now we have a watch that was in the collection last time around, and it really kind of spurred on this love for vintage, and that is my Omega Constellation, reference 14393. So this is a pretty rare constellation. The arrowhead with the date comes in with a 561 caliber from Omega. This dates back from the early 1960s. And just everything about this watch, vintage Omega in my mind, I think if I had to collect one brand, I think it'd be Omega. There's just so much flexibility that you have in your collecting journey, and as you'll see with a couple other watches that I have from them now. And I just love the look of this watch. It just really speaks to me. The pipe hand dial, the cool gold observatory on the case back. It's a watch that I've really grown to love, and I just sent it in for service a little while ago, so I was without it for like 2 months. And through that time, I realized how much I love this watch, being away from it for a while, which I always recommend to people that are considering selling a watch. You know, put it away for a little bit, see if some feelings resurface. And I think that was all I needed to know, that I love this watch. I always think I'm going to have a Constellation in my collection. There's just something about vintage Omega, especially this line, that really speaks to me. All right, from one vintage Omega to the next vintage Omega. And this is a watch that I have shown in a couple of my previous videos, and it got a lot of questions. And it's a pretty rare watch. I have never seen anybody, especially on YouTube, mention this watch before. And that is an Omega Admiralty. So this is from the Omega Genève line. This is from early 1970s, reference 166038. It's powered by Omega's 565 caliber. And this was a watch that was developed during the 1960s and 70s. During this time, Omega Constellations, like I just showed a moment ago, and Omega Seamasters were very popular, especially amongst business professionals. But there was this group of people, mostly teenagers and young adults, that weren't really being targeted by a lot of Omega's watches in their offering. So what they did was they launched Omega Admiralty line to really go after and target this young professional market and these teenagers. And as a guy here, decades later, I found this watch, I learned about this reference, and I really enjoyed it. Something about it is it's quirky, but also the perfect, just kind of casual, everyday watch, summer watch, especially with its fun orange hand, that orange anchor that you see at the 6 o'clock position with the Genève mark. It was one of those watches that I got it too, just to kind of be unique. I think nobody else has one of these on their wrist. And the fact that Omega built this watch for people like me decades ago, and here I am decades later and having this design resonate with me so much, I think it's just really cool. All right, guys, so next up we have my Tudor Submariner, and this is the reference 75090. This is a watch that I think gets overlooked a lot, and as a guy with small wrist, I found this watch and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get one of these. Because it has a 36 millimeter case, but it still comes with a Rolex Submariner case, so you're getting a lot of value for the price point, between like $2,000 to $3,000. The reason why I wanted to get it on top of just it fitting incredibly well on my wrist, it was because of the year it was manufactured, and that was 1993. To get a birth year watch, I always thought it was kind of, a weird little gimmick, but so they were making them during this time, the early 90s, throughout the 90s, and I'm like, why not look for one from 93, just because. And I found one. I found this one specifically. I really liked the blue and how it was so pronounced on it, and I decided to pull the trigger and get it. Of course, it has an ETA movement, but I think for this watch, the fact that it's going to be a lot less to cost to service compared to a lot of the other watches that I have in my collection, and it just looks fantastic. The perfect sizing for me. I thought it was an easy decision to go with it from a brand that has really been rising up in value, and that's Tudor. So I'm really excited to see how they progress as a brand, because that's only going to help this watch continue to go up in value. All right, guys, so my next watch here is my Rolex Datejust 1601. So this dates back to the early 1970s. And if you guys recall from last year's watch collection, I had a different Rolex Datejust 1601. It was a stainless steel one with a gray dial. And if I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I kind of regret selling that one to get this one. There's certain aspects of that one that I like, there's certain aspects of this one I like. And I'm at a current moment right now in my collecting journey where Rolex has such of a status element to it, where I almost don't even want to be associated with it sometimes, but this is a watch, I think the Rolex Datejust, like a lot of people don't really know what it is until they really look at it. Maybe I just hang out with the wrong type of people because they don't really know what I'm wearing on my wrist half the time, which I enjoy. But I am a little bit conflicted right now. If I should have sold that to get this one, I'd love to hear you guys' comments down below about this. But I mean, I still do enjoy this watch. I think it's a fantastic watch. Probably still, has a spot in my collection, of course. But just something I've been thinking about a little bit more and more if I made the right decision to part with the gray dial version compared to this one. All right, so now we have the oldest watch in my collection, and that is another vintage Omega. It is a CK2390, and this is powered by one of Omega's, possibly one of the most iconic manual wound movements, their 30T2 movement. And I was just really drawn to this watch because it dates back to 1946. Just looking at how well this has aged, it's truly beautiful. It really speaks to that era, and I think entering that 40s and 50s and 60s era, I think that's my favorite time for watchmaking. And to get a piece from this era, the beginning of this era, post kind of World War II, is so cool. So I really enjoy this on my wrist. It's a fantastic watch, and from a brand with a ton of heritage that I have really grown to love. And next up, guys, we have my Nomos Orion. And as many of you know, I really do love this watch. This was a watch that just really struck me when I first saw it. I thought it was just really perfectly designed for what my aesthetic is. Just simple, not overdone, but when you really look at this watch closer and closer, you realize that there's a lot there, especially when you flip over the sapphire case back and see that alpha manual in-house movement they have from Nomos. It's just a great constructed watch. 35 millimeters, it wears much larger than that because it does have very long lugs. But it was a watch that I bought myself after my first promotion out of school. I think this watch is going to age incredibly well, and I think there'll always be a place for this watch in my collection. So guys, we have a watch here that I've never featured on the channel before, so a little surprise for you all. And this is from a brand that I've never owned before. So this is my first watch from this brand, IWC. And it is my IWC reference 604. So this is a watch that just really jumped out at me. I am just amazed with the watches of IWC through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I think that was just a golden era for the brand. And behind a lot of these watches, of course, their Pilot's watches are usually the most popular watches that we associate with this brand, but their dress watches during this era are fantastic. And underneath the hood of these watches, you'll find a very similar player that you would see in a lot of the Pilot watches, which is their caliber 89, is what's powering this watch here. This watch, though, is a little bit past when this caliber came into production in the 1940s. This is from 1969. They stopped making this caliber in 74. I mean, if you look at those indices on this watch, it literally looks like little planes. I thought that was so cool. I think some people might think that those indices are a little bit too much, but the 18 karat gold, you put this in the light, it really does shine, and it's just super elegant. Probably one of the best looking dress watches that I've seen, and to just get a watch that just looks this great, fits so well in my wrist from a brand with a ton of history that I have not really ventured into yet, and to be powered by a caliber that was arguably IWC's greatest manual wound movement ever, I think you're getting a lot of watch here, and I'm just really happy to have this watch in the collection. So two other watches before I go through the last watch that I think is really important to share with you all. I have a Seiko SNK 803, which I love. It's kind of like my little fun beater watch. Great watch, really enjoy it. And of course I have my Casio F91W, a watch that I work out with pretty much every day. If I'm gonna say what watch I wear the most, it's probably actually that watch, believe it or not. However, before we go, there's one watch I wanted to share with you guys, and I think it probably means the most in terms of just sentimental value. So this is a watch, it's a vintage Wittenauer. It was owned by my great-grandfather. And just a little story behind this watch. My great-grandfather had 11 kids. He came over from Italy back in the early 20th century and had 11 kids. Out of those 11 kids, boys and girls, there was only one boy who had one son. So there was only one person to give on the family name, and that was my dad. So my dad was named after my great-grandfather, Canio. He was given the name Carl as kind of the Americanized version of the name. However, my dad was nicknamed Teddy, just like me. And for the longest time up to that point, my dad, would always go by Teddy. And when my dad was a young adolescent, around 13, my great-grandfather passed away. And at that moment, my dad was helping my great-grandmother kind of, clean up the estate. And when my great-grandmother came upon this watch, a watch that my great-grandfather wore all the time, she pulled my dad aside and looked at him in the eyes, handed him this watch with her hands, and with her broken English, looked at him in the eyes and said, "You are the only Baldassarre." And from that day on, he was never Teddy again. He was Carl, and he knew what he needed to do, and that was to pass on the family name. And here I am. My name's Teddy, but my real name's Carl. And to be holding this watch, a watch that was engraved from 1958 from my great-grandfather, and seeing the direct lineage that it has to the person that I am, is just really cool. And I think it really personifies, why I love watches so much. And although I don't wear this watch, it's just a watch that's really special to me for reasons way beyond just the metal that it's built out of. So guys, there you have it. That is my watch collection as of July 2018. What do you guys think? Do you guys like it? Do you guys hate it? Love to hear comments down below, as always, for all the videos. And it's been a really awesome journey since I posted that first collection video. So guys, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe if you have not subscribed already. If you haven't, I really don't know what you're doing. Also hit that bell icon, and then check out my Instagram. I post some awesome photos. That's probably the best way to interact with me as well, in terms of just kind of keeping up with the content and just interacting with me on a personal level. Also check out our Patreon. All of that would support this channel and helping build the next generation of watch lovers, one video at a time. And then also, watch strap line is going to be dropping at the end of the summer, so keep your eyes open for that as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, be well, and I will see you all very soon.